Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari
Water?
Oh no, it's okay. I'm cold. I never drink the water.
Oh.
And then I bring it down. I had water earlier this morning. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we're reading today from the Transcendental Diary, Travels with His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, October 1976 to November 1976 by Hari Saridas. Proper knowledge, he said, is attainable by approaching a guru. And he laid great stress on what the proper attitude must be in order to get benefit from such an approach. To accept guru means the disciple should be very, very eager to know. Sadharma prichat adau guru asrayam. Why you accept a guru? It is a fashion. Everyone has guru, everyone has a dog. Well, let me keep a dog like that, a pet dog. So similarly, to keep a pet guru, it should not. One should be very inquisitive, and everywhere the same thing. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprasnena sevaya. Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, verse 34. Don't make inquiries cheap. Here is my Guru, and he's meant for answering all my questions. Let me go on, questioning. No. Sevaya, you must serve. You must be ready to serve him. Then you have got a right to make a question. Otherwise not. 2 things. First of all, you must find out a person where you can fully surrender. Pranipatena. And then you can inquire, and the inquiry should be compensated by seva. The more you are inclined to render seva, the more the truth becomes revealed. Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha gura tasyaite katita hirta prakasante mahatmana. Svetasvara Upanishad 6:23. It is a different science. The more you are inclined to render service, the more spiritual truth becomes revealed. If you are not inquisitive, don't bother yourself to have a guru. Useless, there is no need. Referring to our human propensity to make plans for happiness, Prabhupada differentiated between the results of modern education and the knowledge coming from Krishna. So this abodha jataha, this rascal civilization, whatever they are planning, whatever they are doing, that is simply defeat. He does not know what is the aim of life. They are being defeated. This life I have become Prime Minister, making so many plans, and so many things. Next life I become a dog. That you cannot check. The God's law, or nature's law, will not take into account of your premiership, your prime ministership. What you are actually, that is nature's law. Krishna is there within your heart. Outwardly, you become a very big man, minister, president, and so on. And God is seeing within what you are. Within. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridese arjuna tishtati. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 61. Within, you are a dog. And outside, if you are a president, that will not help you. Therefore, whatever plan they are making, that's all defeat. Plan making is already there. Krishna has given plan gradually. The last plan is Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mam Ekam Saranam Vraja. This is real plan. This is Krishna. Has given so many plans. Karma yogi, dhyana yogi, this yogi, that. But everywhere he has concluded that the real plan is how to become Krishna conscious. That is the real plan. If you do not get success, what is the use of your working so hard? So without consulting Shastra, without consulting Guru, without consulting Krishna, Krishna is so kind. He has given. He has come to help you because you are being misled by the so-called leaders. These rascals, these leaders. They will simply mislead you. Andha yatandhaya upaniyamanas. They are blind. They do not know how to live. They do not know. Therefore, Krishna personally comes. All right, I shall lead you. Take my advice, take my instruction, and ultimately surrender unto me. Then I'll lead you back to home, back to Godhead. Jai, Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Pastimes Ki Jai. Are there any questions or comments? So we have to render service, yes sir.
I was lately reading that there's actually sometimes more gurus, and the first guru not necessarily is the initiating guru. Is that often the case, or?
There are 3 types of gurus I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yep, there is a Vartmana Pradak Guru, There's a Siksha Guru and there's a Diksha Guru. Vartmana Pradaksha Guru shows the way. So, for example, you're distributing books. It's like you're showing the way. So you're like a Vartmana Pradaksha Guru. If the person is sincere. And then there is a Siksha Guru who gives instruction in spiritual life. Prabhupada says in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, I have it written down, I don't know exactly where. But in one of the purports he says that initiation actually means following instructions. Prabhupada also gives the example of his own life. He said when he met his guru, he accepted. But later on there was a formal initiation.
Yeah,
he said
can it also be the initiating guru? The guru, whatever you want to call it.
Vartmana Pradaksha Guru?
Vartmana Pradaksha Guru, yeah.
Sure. Someone who shows you the way, gives you instructions, and then also gives you formal initiation.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Okay. But you have to render service in a humble state of mind, with humility. Humility also, Prabhupada says, and then I was reading this recently, I think it's his first canto, it's like 17th chapter, that pride is to have a very high estimation of your opinion. Having a very high, wenn man denkt, dass deine Meinung, die eigene Meinung, das ist ganz, ganz wichtig. Meine Meinung ist ganz wichtig. Kennst du das? Hast du von meiner Meinung gehört? That's pride, Stolz, Damba. And you have a very, wenn man hat ein großes Gemaße auf seine einige Meinung. Gemesse. When you have a very high estimation of your own opinion, that is called pride. It's in the first canto, I think it's 17th chapter. Somewhere in that. Erste Kanto, 17 Kapitel, irgendwo in die Erläuterung, Kommentar. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, 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 Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, 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 Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, 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 Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, 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 Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So today we will read from the Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 16, beginning with verse 45. Shokera Arta Kaila Viprapaya Santosha
Shlokera Arthakaya Viprapaya Santosha.
Prabhu kahe kaha Shlokera kiba guna dosha.
Prabhu kahe kaha Shlokera kiba guna dosha.
Shlokera ata kaila viprapaya santosha.
Shlokera Arthakaya Viprapaya Santosha.
Prabhu kahe kaha Shlokera kiba guna dosha.
Prabhu kahe kaha Shlokera kiba guna dosha.
Okay, Bhaktas would like to repeat.
Shlokera artha kaila viprapaya santosha.
Shlokera ata kaila viprapaya santosha.
Prabhu kahe kaha shlokera kiba guna dosha.
Prabhu kahe kahe kaha Shlokera kiba guna dosha.
Shlokera artha kaila viprapaya santosha.
Shlokera ata kaila viprapaya santosha.
Prabhu kahe kaha shlokera guba gunadosha.
Prabhu kahe kaha Shlokera kiba guna dosha. Shlokera arta kaila viprapaya santosha. Prabhu kahe kaha Shlokera kiba guna dosha.
Shlokera artha kaila viprapaya santosha.
Shlokera ata kaila viprapaya santosha. Prabhu kahe kaha Shlokera kiba guna dosha. Synonyms. Shlokera, of the verse. Artha, explanation. Kaila, made. Vipra, the Brahmana. Paya, obtaining. Santosha, satisfaction. Prabhu, the Lord. Kahe, said. Kaha, kindly. Kindly speak. Shlokera, of the verse. Kiba, what are. Guna, qualities. Dosha, faults. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Satisfied by the statement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Brahmana, Keshava Kashmiri, explained the quoted verse. Then the Lord said, now kindly explain the special qualities and faults in the verse. Purport. Not only did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu pick out this one among the 100 verses and remember it, although the Brahmana had recited them like the blowing wind, but he also analyzed its qualities and faults. Not only did he hear the verse, but he immediately made a critical study of it. Text 46. Vipra kahe shloke nahi doshera abhasa upama lankara guna kichu anuprasa. Translation. The Brahmana replied, there is not a tinge of fault in that verse. Rather, it has the good qualities of similes and alliteration. Purport. In the last line of the verse, quoted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the letter Bha is repeated many times, as in the words Bhavani, Bhartur, Vibhavati, and Adbhuta. Such repetition is called anuprasa, or alliteration. The words Lakshmir Iva and Vishnu's Charanaka Malapati are instances of upama alankara, for they exhibit metaphorical beauty. The Ganga is water, and Lakshmi is the goddess of fortune. Since water and a person are not actually similar, the comparison is metaphorical. Text 47. Prapu kahena kahiyadina karaha rosha kaha tomara e shloke kiva ache dosha. Translation. The Lord said, "My dear sir, I may say something to you if you will not become angry. Can you explain the faults in this verse?" Text 48. Pratibhara kavya tomara devata santoshe bala mate vicharile jani guna doshe. Translation. There is no doubt that your poetry is full of ingenuity, and certainly it has satisfied the Supreme Lord. Yet, if we scrutinizingly consider it, we can find both good qualities and faults. Text 49. Tate bhala kari shloka karaha vichara kavi kahe ye kahile sei veda sara. Translation. The Lord concluded, "Now, therefore, let us carefully scrutinize this verse." The poet replied, "Yes, the verse you have recited is perfectly correct." Text 50. Karaniya tumi nahi pada alankara tumi ki janibe e kavitvera sara. You are an ordinary student of grammar. What do you know about literary embellishments? You cannot review this poetry because you do not know anything about it. Purport. Keshava Kashmiri first wanted to bluff Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu by saying that he was not an advanced student in literary style. He could not review a verse full of metaphors and literary ornaments. This argument has some basis in fact. Unless one is a medical man, one cannot criticize a medical man. And unless one is a lawyer, he cannot criticize a lawyer. Therefore, Keshava Kashmiri first depreciated the Lord's position. Because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was to the champion a student of grammar, how could he dare criticize a great poet like him? Lord Chaitanya, therefore, criticized the poet in a different way. He said that although he was certainly not advanced in a literary career, he had heard from others how to criticize such poetry. And as a Shrutidhara, possessing a complete memory, he could understand the process for such a review. Okay, I'm just going to all right. So this is something very interesting which is being said here in the purport, and it's also said in the Bhagavad Gita. He said that although he was certainly not advanced in a literary career, he had heard from others how to criticize such poetry. So in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says to Krishna, he cites others when he says, when he's talking about, I believe this is when he's talking about the degradation of the family and society. I have heard from others that rise in unwanted population or something like that. And then he starts saying how the society goes downward when there's a rise of unwanted population, when the women of the family become involved in religion, and these things. He cites authorities. And Prabhupada talks about it in the purport. He says, that he is citing authority. And so also, right here, this has been exemplified by the personality of Godhead. He had heard from others how to criticize such poetry. So this is a very important point. Hearing from others who are an authority. Hearing from authority. Man hört von was heißt Autorität? Autorität, einfach. Yeah? So hearing from authority is a very important principle in our philosophy. And we have to hear from authority. And that constitutes, when we speak, what we've heard from authority, that is called austerity of speech. So we should not invent anything. Never we should invent. I remember the first time I gave Bhagavatam class, I said, I think. So I was pretty young in the movement. I didn't know, that we don't think. We don't speculate about the philosophy. We hear from authority and we repeat what we have heard. And that is perfect preaching. If we understand the science of Krishna consciousness from authority, and we simply repeat according to time, place, and circumstance, then there's no invention. That's perfect preaching. And what is even better than that is when we have realization on the matter. So we should also try to practice the philosophy so that we can have realization. It's so important to hear. And if you look at the different senses, there are senses for seeing, touching, tasting, smelling, and hearing. And they have sense objects. And the sound vibration is carried through the ether, Akash. And Akash is the most subtle of these material elements. There are earth, fire, water, air, ether. Ether is the most subtle. So this most subtle material element that carries this hearing, this sound, is the most important. Everything we learn from hearing. And of course, there are so many things we can learn, right? We can learn about being a lawyer. We can learn about being a poet or a medical person. But as it happens, that the most important science is the science of the soul, which is explained in the Bhagavad Gita very nicely. And this is also, so, even in, further, more things are said about the hearing, that even if you're sleeping, none of your senses are alert. If no one can wake you but through hearing, sound. In this hearing, it protects you like that. So I want to just emphasize this importance of hearing, and not enough just to hear it, but you have to follow also. So a few more things about hearing. One symptom of intelligence is doubt, misapprehension, doubt, apprehension, and some other characteristics of intelligence. But doubt is very important, because to doubt is a symptom of intelligence. You have to inquire. But when you are hearing from authority, when you have found an authoritative source, doubting can be very dangerous. So if you're reading Bhagavad Gita and you don't believe, the Prabhupada says in the preface, I think, or the introduction, I think it's a preface, that at least you should accept it on theoretically. You don't have to accept in your heart, but at least theoretically you should accept it. Because otherwise your doubting is not going to help you. For the doubting soul, Prabhupada, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, for the doubting soul, there is not happiness in this life nor in the next life. So if you're hearing from authority and you're always doubting, it's problematic for you. You have to accept authority. You may not accept a representative of authority, and that's fine. Find somebody you can surrender to. You want me just reading this in the Transcendental Diary? Pariprasnena. Find somebody you can surrender to and accept them as an authority. Accept. And at least in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, the last time I checked, the last time I heard about this, it is recommended that you surrender to Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And you can learn all about Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada's instructions by reading his purports, the Bhaktivedanta purports. So this Caitanya Caritamrita, it is also a compilation of Bhaktivedanta purports, right? These are his purports in the Caitanya Caritamrita of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So we have so much we can learn. So one should accept, if you want to take this Krishna consciousness seriously, in the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, then you have to accept the authority of Srila Prabhupada. And to understand what that means, if you are sincere about it, you have to read his purports. Bhaktivedanta purports. It's very important. As a regular daily function. Just like we're chanting every day, we should every day be reading Bhaktivedanta purports. And then from reading Bhaktivedanta purports, you will understand so much that you will be, well qualified to convince others of Krishna consciousness. Defend yourself against the onslaught of Mayavadis. Srimad Bhagavatam, like, if you read it. But the point I want to make is that you will be able to identify an authority. It explains how. He's telling you how. You'll be able to recognize. And you have to accept. And you have to follow according to your capacity. Not everybody has the capacity to fully surrender right away. Because we have so much attachment. But if you're serious about spiritual life, then you make small steps. You accept authority and you slowly advance towards the goal of Krishna consciousness by applying what you hear from authority. Okay, so I will read some more.
Questions at the end, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I was asking if the question is at the end. Or if I look
If you have a question, so you can ask a question.
If we have some doubts, should we then consider an austerity? Because many purpose of the Srila Prabhupada, they are out of fashion, so to speak.
Out of fashion?
Yeah, talking about Indian culture, there's a little bit of difference in the modern society. So there are this opinions always, no? Isn't it? There are different opinions in ISKCON also about that, as far as I know. But just if we should consider an authority.
You should always accept an authority, and the question was redressing that Sorry, sir?
When we have doubts.
When we have doubts.
Yeah.
When we're reading a purport and it seems like something is out of fashion. That's the word you use, right? And we have doubts. Should we question authority? First I want to say this, that you have to accept the essence. If you try to screw some kind of a meaning out of it, that means interpretation is going on. We don't interpret. But we have to be intelligent enough. Intelligence means that you're not having material attachments. if you have a strong desire to control anything, that's material attachment. It's one division of contaminated consciousness. This is like introduction of the Bhagavad Gita. If you have a strong desire to enjoy identity, don't you know my title? Or, career, my occupation. Don't you know what I do, my occupation? These things, if you have, then you are also enjoying, right? And it will interfere with your intelligence. So we have to have really nice intelligence to be able to accept the essence. The essence. And the example is given by Prabhupada himself. He took the essence of this Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, and like a tree, he planted it in the Western countries. And people complained that he did things he wasn't supposed to do. He allowed women to go on the altar, to take initiation, a lot of things, so many things, right? But he took the essence of Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. He maintained it. So we should take the essence. And if you have doubts, approach an authority, of course. Someone who's more advanced than you are. Yeah. All right. So I will read a little bit more. Prabhu kahena ataiva puchiya tomare vichariya gunadosha bujhara amare bujhaha amare. Taking a humble position, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu said, because I am not of your level, I have asked you to teach me by explaining the faults and qualities in your poetry. Nahi padi alankara kariyachi sravana tate esloke deki bahudosha guna. Chai Shishi Vijay Garanga Dayal Nitai Ki Jai. Certainly I have not studied the art of literary embellishments, but I have heard about it from higher circles, and thus I can review this verse and find in it many faults and many good qualities. Purport. The statement Kariyachi Sravana, I have heard it, is very important in the sense that hearing is more important than directly studying or perceiving. If one is expert in hearing and hears from the right source, his knowledge is immediately perfect. This process is called Shrauta Panta, or the acquirement of knowledge by hearing from authorities. All Vedic knowledge is based on the principle that one must approach a bona fide spiritual master and hear from the authoritative statements of the Vedas. It is not necessary for one to be a highly polished literary man to receive knowledge. To receive perfect knowledge from a perfect person, one must be expert in hearing. This is called the descending process of deductive knowledge, or Avaroha Panta. So that's, Prabhupada is just sort of, I should have read actually, I should have just probably, anyway. So confirmation, right? We were just talking about the importance of hearing, but something else is mentioned here is very nice. Some more things here. One must be expert in hearing. And what does that mean, to be expert in hearing? To be expert in anything, you have to practice. You have to practice. It requires practice. Unless you're born like Shukadeva Goswami. But for us, we are not born like Shukadeva Goswami, so we have to practice. We have to practice hearing. And if you live in a temple or if you practice Gaudiya Vaishnavism, your life is established in such a way that on a daily basis you are practicing hearing. Hearing the Mahamantra, hearing the Kirtan, hearing the Caitanya Caritamrita, hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. On a regular daily basis we practice this hearing. So hearing should be with rapt attention. Hearing attentively means you give attention to what you're hearing. So we could give our attention of the mind to the other senses, the desire to control, the desire to enjoy, to our designation, to prasadam, we want to honor, taste later, something like that. So many things we can give our attention to. But rapt attention means all of the attention goes on hearing. And that requires faith. Because in the beginning we don't see what is there in the Mahamantra. We don't hear what is there. But if we continue to hear authority, to read Srimad Bhagavatam, eventually we will develop the faith to listen nicely. And in that listening, in that hearing process, your mind can find refuge. That's called taking shelter. Taking shelter of the holy name. Because the mind, wow, it's really a source of so much distress and causing so many problems, really. Accepting, rejecting, memories, so many memories from lifetimes. But with this process of hearing, the mind can find peace. So the mind should actually rest in the sound of the Mahamantra. But the only way the mind is able to rest in that sound is by attentive hearing. And it's not just that when I finish my rounds, I'm done hearing for the day. I want to hear all day. Because it's a practice. I want to practice hearing all day. Being attentive to my hearing. Being attentive to my service. We were reading today in the Sittat, Prabhupada's Sittat. Wherever you are, that is Krishna's plan. Be very attentive to the details of your service. That's like attentive hearing also. Attentive to the details of every syllable of the Mahamantra. Attentive to the details of how you're cleaning, how you're cooking. All of it. Being very attentive. The mind will find refuge in that. That is called devotional service. And the mind can rest in it. Otherwise, there's no refuge for the mind. Chanchala hi mana Krishna. The mind is flickering like a candle, moving around. All right. Text 53. Kavi kahe kaha deki kon guna dosha, Prabhu kahe ne, Prabhu kahena kaisuna nakariha rosha. Translation. The poet said, "All right, let me see what qualities and faults you have found." The Lord replied, "Let me speak, and please hear me without becoming angry." Text 54. Pancha dosha e shloke pancha alankara krame ami kahi suna karaha vichara. My dear sir, in this verse there are 5 faults and 5 literary ornaments. I shall state them one after another. Kindly hear me and then give your judgment. In the verse beginning with Mahatvam Gangayaha, there are 5 literary ornaments and 5 examples of faulty composition. There are 2 examples of the fault called Avimbrishta vidheyangsa, and one example each of the faults Viruddha Mati, Punar Ukti, and Bhagna Krama. Vimrishta means clean, and vidheyangsa means predicate. It is a general rule of composition to establish a subject first and then give its predicate. For example, according to Sanskrit grammar, if one says, "This man is learned," his composition is in order. But if one says, "Learned is this man," the composition is not in order. Such a flaw is called avimrishta vidheyangsa dosha, or the fault of unclean composition. The subject matter to be known of the verse is the glorification of the Ganga, and therefore the word idam, this, or what is known should have been placed before instead of after the glorification. The subject matter already known should be placed before the unknown, so that its meaning will not be misconstrued. The second instance of avimrishta vidheyangsa dosha occurs in the words Dvitiya Sri Lakshmir Iva. In this composition, the word Dvitiya, second, is vidheya, or unknown. Placing the unknown first to make the compound word Dvitiya Sri Lakshmir is another fault. The words Dvitiya Sri Lakshmir Eva were intended to compare the Ganga to the goddess of fortune. But because of this fault, the meaning of the compound word was bewildering. The third fault is that of Viruddha Mati, or contradictory conception. In the words Bhavani Bhartu, the word Bhavani refers to the wife of Bhava, Lord Shiva. But since Bhavani is already known as the wife of Lord Shiva, to add the word Bharta, husband, thus forming a compound meaning, the husband of the wife of Lord Shiva, is contradictory. For thus it appears as if the wife of Lord Shiva had another husband. The fourth fault is punar ukti, or redundancy, which occurs when the verb vibhavati flourishes, which should have ended the composition, is further qualified by the unnecessary adjective adbhuta guna, endowed with wonderful qualities. This fifth fault is bhagna krama, which means broken order. In the first, third, and fourth lines there is anuprasa, or alliteration, created by the words ta, ra, and bha. But in the second line there is no such anuprasa, and therefore the order is broken. I am not qualified to comment on this purport. So I will go to the next verse, text 55. Avimrishta vidheyangsa duitani chinha viruddhamati bhagna krama punarata doshatina. Translation. In this verse, the fault of avimrishta vidheyangsa occurs twice. And the faults of viruddhamati, bhagna krama, and punarata occur each once. Text 56. Gangara mahatva shloke mula vidheya idang sabde anuvada pache avidheya. The glorification, translation, the glorification of the Ganga, Mahatvam Gangayaha, is the principal unknown subject matter in this verse. And the known subject matter is indicated by the word idam, which has been placed after the unknown. Text 57. Vidheya age kahi pache kahile anuvada hei lagi shlokera artha kariyache bhadha. Translation. Because you have placed the known subject at the end and that which is unknown at the beginning, the composition is faulty and the meaning of the words has become doubtful. Anuvadam Anuktvaiva Navidheyam Audiraye Nahyalabdaspadam Kinchit Kuchachit Pratishtati. Translation. Without first mentioning what is known, one should not introduce the unknown, for that which has no solid basis can never be established anywhere. Dvitiya Sri Lakshmi Iham Vitiyatva Jidheya Samase Gauna Haile Sabdharta Gilakshaya. Translation. In the word Dvitiya Sri Lakshmi, the second all-opulent goddess of fortune, the quality of being a second Lakshmi is the unknown. In making this compound word, the meaning became secondary, and the originally intended meaning was lost.
Is it in previous text short comments of Prabhupada?
I'm on text, I just read text 59, there's no comment. Before that was 58, there's no comment.
58, no comment.
No comment. In the Adi Lila chapter 16, verse 58, in this edition of the Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, there is no comment after the translation.
Strange. I have some short comments in mind.
Oh, really?
This text from Gauradesh Tattva.
In this edition, I don't know what year this is, but I know that...
From internet.
58. Yeah, 58.
Can I just look really quick to see? Could be that... Oh, this says copyright by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust 1974, but I don't know if that's in reference to when this was actually published, or this edition. This could be an older version, I don't know. I'm really not qualified. If there's to comment on your
in 58, nothing. Yeah?
Nothing is here, sir. And therefore we won't be reading anything. We will continue. Thank you very much. Text 60. Dvitiya sabda vidheya taha padila samase lakshmira samata arta karila vinase. I'm sorry, my Bengali is pretty bad. Translation. Because the word dvitiya, second, is the unknown, in its combination in this compound word, the intended meaning of equality with Lakshmi is lost. Text 61. And Abhingrishta vidheyangsa e toshera nama arag eka dosha ache suna savadana. Not only is there the fault of Abhingrishta vidheyangsa, but there is also another fault, which I shall point out to you. Kindly hear me with great attention. Bhavani Bhartar Sabda Dile Paya Santosha Virudhamati Krit Nama E Maha Dosha. Here is another great fault. You have arranged the word Bhavani Bhartar to your great satisfaction, but this betrays the fault of contradiction. Bhavani Sabde Kahe Mahadevera Grihini Tangra Bharta Kahile Dvitiya Bharta Jani. The word Bhavani means the wife of Lord Shiva, but when we mention her husband, one might conclude that she has another husband. Text 64. Shiva Patnira Bharta Ihe Sunite Virudha Virudhamati Krit Sabda Sasre Nahe Sudha. It is contradictory to hear that Lord Shiva's wife has another husband. The use of such words in literature creates the fault called Virudha Krit. Brahmana Padmira Bhartara Haste Dehadana Sabda Sunite Haya Dvitiya Bharta Jnana. If someone says, place this charity in the hand of the husband, of the wife of the Brahmana, when we hear these contradictory words, we immediately understand that the Brahmana's wife has another husband. Vibhavati kriyaya vakya sanga puna viseshana adbhuta guna e punar ata dushana. The statement by the word vibhavati, flourishes, is complete, qualifying it with the adjective adbhuta guna, wonderful qualities, creates the fault of redundancy. Tina pade anuprasa deki anupama ekapade nahi e dosha bhagna krama. There is extraordinary alliteration in 3 lines of the verse, but in 1 line there is no such alliteration. There is the fault of deviation. Yadyapi e shloke ache pancha alankara e pancha doshe shloka kaila charakara. Although there are 5 literary ornaments decorating this verse, the entire verse has been spoiled by these 5 most faulty presentations. Dasa alankare yadi eka shloka haya, eka doshe saba alankara haya kshaya. If there are 10 literary ornaments in a verse, but even 1 faulty expression, the entire verse is nullified. Sundara sarira yaiche bhushane bhushita, eka sveta kushte yaiche kalaye vigita. One's beautiful body may be decorated with jewels, but 1 spot of white leprosy makes the entire body abominable. Purport. The great sage Bharata Muni, an authority on poetic metaphor, has given his opinion in this connection as follows. And that's where we will end today, ladies and gentlemen. Tomorrow we will pick it up from there, text 71. Or no, next week. Nächste Woche. Vielen lieben Dank für Ihre Anhörigkeit. Sri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai.
Vielen Dank.
Anhörigkeit, ist das das richtige Wort? Was heißt das? Anhörigkeit, ist das wirklich ein Wort? Nein, ja, inventing.